Hello there, and welcome to How Big Could It Be? Discover the size of your true opportunity with the size your market maker. This is such an exciting conversation because it really helps you decide the bigger picture of who you're meant to serve, and it will dramatically improve how you are able to serve your clients and see your business. So, are you leading without a map? So often we see this happening where founders are leading blindly without a clear map of the market they're serving and where exactly they're going, which areas they want to focus in, where they want to be great. So be sure to know where you're headed. And this masterclass today is going to help you do this. Are you and your team unsure of how big your opportunity really is? This is also an area that can be a challenge. Maybe you don't know how big your company can be with your current constraints or current ideas. Does your team and you and your investors struggle to see the company's full potential because it's not specific enough? Is your company trying to grow without clearly knowing who you can serve or how much you can truly capture? Do you long for your company to be able to grow beyond you, but aren't sure how big your business can become? It's very nebulous. So you might be making $1 million decisions every day based on instinct alone. And often we tend to do that when we haven't defined our clear market. So intuition is powerful, but without a clear data-backed market sizing, it's like sailing without a compass. You might eventually arrive where you're going, but you'll waste time, money, and energy getting there. What if the biggest reason your company isn't growing faster isn't your product, your people, or your pitch, but your map? Think about that for a second. Every founder wants to scale, but most are operating without one of the most strategic tools. This was me until my last business. I didn't have a clear market scoped TAM, SAM, and SOM. So a clear understanding of TAM, SAM, and SOM, we'll unpack what those are. They help you create a roadmap for growth, a signal for strategic maturity, and a way to align your vision with execution. What is your business worth? That's something you need to be thinking about. Let's talk about valuation, something every founder hopefully will eventually think about, whether they want to admit it or not. Whether you dream of one day selling your company, attracting funding, or simply building lasting prosperity, one thing is true: your company's worth begins with your market. So that is what we're going to focus on today. So we're going to move right into these three important core growth elements and an important force for good tool that you can use to help you quickly decipher what these things are for your company. So TAM is the total available market, SAM is the serviceable addressable market, and SOM is the serviceable obtainable market. We're going to get into that in just a second. We're going to use the Size Your Market Maker tool that you can get for free by going to aforceforgood.biz/weekly tool. It's free until Sunday, May 11th. And you can pick it up there. You'll also see in this time, in this workshop, this masterclass, you'll be able to use this tool and define your TAM, SAM, and SOM, or at least to really get a good draft of it. And you're going to walk away with a specific high leverage habit and one high potency action so that you put into action what you learn. So every time we have a master class and we focus on a core growth element, and today there are three, they are meant to inspire exponential perpetual growth into your company. So today we're going to use the opportunity of a new habit and an action to help you get there. So if you haven't already, download the Size Your Market Maker now, and you can follow right along with that tool as we go through this master class. So what is TAM, SAM, and SOM? So I didn't really know about this until I started a business where I really had to think about investors. I needed to think about debt and equity. I needed to think about what my options were. And what I realized after the fact was that knowing these three things, whether you plan to bootstrap everything or never go for funding or not, these three things put your brain in a different strategic place and help you think differently about your company and your growth. It helps you get sharper. So the total available market is the total demand for a product or service in a given market. It's a big market. It encompasses all potential customers or revenue opportunity for a particular product or service without considering any constraints. So if you were in the business of selling smartphones, the total available market, or TAM, would include every potential buyer of smartphones and every single sale of smartphones in your industry worldwide, regardless of brand preference or affordability. So the big dollar amount that could be derived in a year's time revenue basis of a particular industry. So really big global picture. Next, and what the value of this is, it requires you to name the big picture market you live in. And that's really powerful, as you'll see. Serviceable addressable market, SAM, is the piece of that TAM. It's a portion of it. It's a segment of that market that your business can effectively serve. Okay. It's a target based on your resources, capabilities, and constraints, not necessarily like it's within your wheelhouse. Which part of the market are you going to serve? And so an example would be using the smartphone example. If your company only sells high-end smartphones, then your SAM would be the portion of the TAM that consists of customers willing and able to afford high-end smartphones. So then you name that gigantic market. And then after that, then you say, okay, what's my serviceable obtainable market? And we look at this in sort of different constructs, different timelines. In the Force for Good system, we like to think in 10-year gaps, 10-year sprints, not sprints, 10-year milestones, 10-year impact goals. And so we want to think of this as a 10-year, how big of a market can I obtain? So the portion of the serviceable addressable market your business can realistically expect, with some stretching and expanding, to obtain within a specific time frame. So imagine how big you could get within your market in 10 years. So continuing on with the smartphone example, so you might say that if your company forecasts that it can capture 15% of the SAM within 10 years, then 15% represents the SOM. Okay, so we're going to look at some more examples to make this a little more clear. Okay, I'm going to actually show those to you right now, and then you'll see why it's important. So TAM, SAM, and SOM examples. Let's look at Maven Clinic, a company you might be familiar with. A really great example, Kate Ryder, of a female founder. She's in this women's health tech business, and the total global women's health market is $40 billion. The SAM, which is the piece that her business focuses on, is telehealth for women, and that's $5 billion of the $40 billion market. And her SOM, $100 million, is actually how much of the market she actually penetrates right now. So $100 million is her approximate revenue, which is 2% of the SAM. Okay, so now we look at Fred Sense Technologies, which is water quality monitoring. It's a really cool company that's in technology, and it was co-founded by the brilliant Emily Hicks. So we look at this market, and the $47 billion global water monitoring market. It's a big fat market across the world, 4.7 billion. And they're saying, well, we're not going to look at all global water monitoring market. Our technology is focused on industrial water. And we're going to specifically focus on North America's industrial water. And that's 1.5 billion. So from 4.7 billion to 1.5 billion, still enormous, right? And they're like right now at about $10 million in annual revenue. So they have 0.67 of SAM. So their SOM is $10 million or 6.67%. Now, if we ask them, and I haven't, but we said to them, how big do you want to be in 10 years? They might say, oh, we want to be $100 million. And so then, of course, their SOM would increase significantly, right? And they would say, this is the SOM we're going after. So we've got a couple examples here, a sustainable food tech company, $29.4 billion global plant-based food market. They're going after very specific area, West Africa's plant-based snacks. And so that's 500 million. And right now they own about $2 million annually of that market, which is 0.04%. So again, we could ask Ellie Fink, the founder, how big do you want to grow in the next 10 years? And she might tell you $20 million, right? And so then she would move up to 0.4% of the total market in West Africa's plant-based snack segments. So Rent the Runway is another example maybe you have used. I certainly have. And it's a fashion rental business founded by Jennifer Hyman and Jennifer Place. And it's part of a $1.5 trillion global apparel market. So all apparel is $1.5 trillion in the world. So then they said, what area do we want to focus on? And they focus on the $20 billion US women's formal wear market. And they have captured about 0.8% of that market, 157 million, and will continue to grow. And we could ask Jennifer how big they want to grow to in the next 10 years. And they could say, that's the SOM we're going after. So that's the question you're asking yourself. What's the big market? What's the big global market? And then what is that segment you want to go into? And then the piece of that segment you want to own. All right, so now we're going to go back for a second and talk about why you need TAM, SAM, and SOM. So you'll notice that it creates clarity on the total opportunity size. So that's the first thing, right? It's going to help you create clarity on the total opportunity size. TAM gives you the big picture view. How large is the market you're playing in? This matters because it signals to your total potential to grow. And any funder, especially a venture-backed funder or a private equity funder, is going to want to know this. What's the total possible markets out there? So that you can think about how you might grow, whether it's individually, organically, or whether you grow by acquisition, or whether you get acquired by a company that's a huge company, but you're part of a bigger play. So it helps frame visionary thinking, especially for investors, team members who want to understand your ceiling. It shows that it shows if you are in a shrinking pond or a rapidly expanding ocean, right? We want to see that. A femtech founder might show a TAM of 27 billion to demonstrate the rise of global interest and investment in women's health solutions. We're seeing that a lot right now, for example. The second area is the strategic focus, right? You want to have the SAM, the strategic focus. This is my true playing field for my company, not just the whole world, but the part of the world that your company can realistically serve based on your business model, capabilities, and geography. It helps you to avoid wasted effort trying to sell to everyone, right? Rather than trying to be everything to everyone. It allows you to align your resources with your real market. It allows you to prioritize product development and marketing and actually reach the most viable customers for you. So an example would be a health tech startup with limited compliance approvals, right? May narrow its SAM to just US hospital systems rather than global markets. I was just in a meeting 2 weeks ago about this, and we were looking at how big could we take this one particular women's health tech product. And it was really like, well, which countries can we most easily get into? And so we were looking at which countries and what were the specific attributes of those countries. So we were really looking at this idea of the SAM. And then there's the realistic growth planning, and this is your SOM. And different people, different companies, different advisors will have you think about SOM in different timeframes. Some will tell you what's your realistic growth percentage, how much of your SAM can you own in the next year, the next 3 years, next 5 years. I like to think about it first in 10 years and then sort of create smaller goals to help you get to 10 years. So 3 and 5 year goals to get you there. So SOM is your short-term achievable market share, what you can win with your more or less current resources, the team and your ideas and what you're structuring and your positioning. So it's critical to know what this is when you are setting your goals, creating your revenue goals and forecast, making hiring and budgeting decisions, which we talk about later in a separate masterclass on the process of budgeting. And we think about it first really big picture, and then we sort of bring it down to what do you need in the next 12 months, and then 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So earning trust, investor trust shows that you are thinking clearly about, this is my big market, and then here's the smaller SAM market, and now here's the market we're going to go after first. And it helps them understand how you're thinking strategically about the big picture. So it's grounding you, right? It's grounding you in a big picture that has real world plans today. So an example would be a logistics startup might identify a SOM of $20 million in local contracts they are equipped to fulfill in the next 2 years or 10 years, whatever that time period is. So this is the value to you. And we just walked through several different examples of what that looks like. Maven, Fred Sense, and Talmud Foods and Rent the Runway. So now where does it fall on the 4-page growth plan? And the 4-page growth plan, as you know, is the center of the Force for Good growth universe. And by being really clear about your growth plan, you can help yourself see with your team, with yourself, how you're growing. And the 4-page growth plan shows in 4 pages everything you need to know to unlock the puzzle of growth in your company. And so the 4-page growth plan includes all the core growth elements, or at least most of them. And you'll find that on page 1 of the 4-page growth plan, you'll find these core growth elements we're talking about today: the TAM, the SAM, and the SOM. And they're right here on that front page, right smack dab in the middle. And it's under the section of know who you serve. So we want to know our purpose, know who we serve, and know our impact plan. And so this is part of the know who you serve section of the 4-page plan. All right, so let's get into it. Let's go into the Size Your Market Maker. And in it, we're going to research your industry, calculate your TAM, segment your TAM, identify your SAM, calculate your SOM, and put it all together. So go ahead and grab it out right now. And the first thing we're going to do is research your industry. And this is probably something you'll want to do a little offline, but you could also right now open up and start finding some market research reports and government databases and some industry association and trade publications that could help you. So you want to go online, you want to use your chats or your Claudes or perplexities and start looking for some data and reports about your particular market. And so it involves using research and analysis. You're giving yourself, I would say, no more than 15 minutes to find some of these things and start to extract some big picture data. This is not meant to be a huge exercise. You're getting a big picture quickly, and then you can always come back to it. So you'll find some industry reports. And when you do, you're going to look for industry insights that you'll discover about your market. You're going to look at government databases, different industries, and you're going to ask yourself, what's the demographic information in economic indicators and industry insights that you find out about your particular market. So you can look at US Census data, Bureau of Labor and Statistics, other relevant government departments or ministries in your country. I love looking at industry and association trade publications. Here's where you're going to find a wealth of knowledge and information. So things like the National Retail Federation, American Medical Association. I've been in home health, so the Connecticut Association for Healthcare at Home and the National Alliance for Home Care and Hospice. These are places that you can go, that the National Association of Realtors. And so you find your industry and the associations that sort of govern and support that industry, and see if you can find out some data. What market dynamics and trends are you seeing within your market right now? So write down whatever you discover. What are the industry insights, demographic information, and what market dynamics can you uncover? Keep going onto the next page and start to unlock online databases and research platforms like Statistica, marketresearch.com, Mintel, and of course, you can always use your chats and perplexities. These guys are so good at finding deep data for you. You could also find an industry report and upload it and ask it to give you some of the specific information that you want. So look in these online databases and what's the marketing data that you're finding. Write down what you find about your market. You start looking and you're going to be shocked. You can do some Google searches or some chat searches, like search for terms like market size and then put in your industry. So if you're in health tech, what is this market size of health technology? You can then also search for industry trends in health technology. You can then search for market research reports in healthcare technology, or demographic data in your, in your market, whatever that is, healthcare technology. And so you're going to start to look here on the pages. You're going to start to look at one question you're going to ask yourself is, what are the ways your market could be sized? Think about your total market and how it could be sized. For a force for good, I look at it in the total strategic consulting market in the world, right? That's one way I could look at it. There's all kinds of ways to look at it. I could look at overall consulting. I could look at specific types of consulting, right? But I chose strategic consulting. So find the different ways you might want to language what your big market is. And then you're going to start to look and focus. Okay, you're going to have some focus questions to start to think about. How big is the total universe of what we offer? So what is the global demand for the kind of product you offer? And you could ask chat that, right? If every potential customer in the world who could possibly benefit around the whole world could benefit from your solution, how big would that be, right? And again, you would look to see what's the total market for you and that, other competitors are already doing across the world. What industries, demographics, or geographies face the core problem that you solve? And again, we're looking big picture, not just your market, not just, so even if you have a logistics company that's working in one state, you would want to find out how big is that market across the entire world. You would want to see that, even though right now your whole business is only going to be in your one state. What reports, data, or analysts and estimate the size of this overall market? And are there parallel industries that you could look at as part of a broader opportunity? So think about that too. All right, next you're going to keep going on the next page and you're going to start to focus on your serviceable addressable market. So we just thought about the big picture and now we're going to focus in a little bit. You're going to start asking what portion of that total available market can we actually serve? So again, based on your business model, what can you reasonably serve? Is there a particular area of focus that you could really live into? And don't go too small at this point. You want to think still big, right? But you also want to think, so instead of thinking just your state, think nationally, for example. Or instead of thinking, we had Rent the Runway, they didn't say all apparel in the United States. They said all apparel in the luxury going out for, luxury celebrations or however they put it. So how could you define your market? So are there technical, geographical, regulatory limits to who you can serve right now? So I was a home health provider with Illume. I only had a regulation to provide services in the state of Connecticut. Didn't mean that I couldn't have a vision to serve the entire country. Certainly my Medicare license allowed me to do that. So think about the total size and this segment you're specifically building for. So again, I could have been in the home and community-based market, which provides home care, home health, medical equipment. There's all kinds of things. It could be group homes, all kinds of additional community-based care. But which part do I want to be a part of? Which part is my company going to probably stick with for the life of the company? And so identify for yourself, what is that serviceable, addressable market? What you help yourself focus on where you're best equipped as a company. Are there sectors or customer types you should remove from your focus? This is a good question. Even if they fall within your TAM, those are ones that are just like, well, that really creates a whole lot of complexity and we're not as good at that. And if we really stayed focused to this other market, we could really do well. What would we need to change or invest in order to expand our SAM, right? So in my case, if I wanted to, with my previous healthcare company, if I wanted to grow beyond the state of Connecticut, I would need to either acquire a license in another state, or I would need to acquire another business that had a license in that state. So think about those kinds of things too, how you could overcome those kind of market barriers that exist right now, or capabilities. And then focus on the next piece, which is focus questions around this serviceable, obtainable market. What portion of your SAM can you realistically capture in the next 12 to 24 months, or 3 to 6 years? How far out? Let's look out 3 to 5 years in this question. And given your current team, marketing budget, and capacity, how many customers can you realistically serve if you really were able to go out there and do it? What would winning look like over the next 3 to 5 years? And what are the boundaries to capturing more, right? How can we lower those boundaries? And how many customers, contracts, or users could we support today at full capacity? And how does your SOM change if you raise capital, launch new product, or expand your team? So think about the size of your market right now, maybe in the next 12 to 24 months, but then how could you grow it? How big would it be in 3 years or 5 years? And where could you go in 10 years? All right. So you're starting to identify your serviceable, obtainable market. And you're really looking here to see how big could my revenue be? What percentage of the total market and how much revenue could I capture? And last, I would say it's a great idea outside of this masterclass, because you can't do it while we're in the masterclass, but to conduct some customer surveys and do some interviews. This is a great way to connect with your audience. Reach out and analyze your market with customer surveys, interviews. You can use various tools, SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, to help you get some information out there. You can use social media to gather information and help you grow. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next piece, which is calculating your total available market. So now that you've done some research on your whole market, all of it, it's time to describe your total available market. So what's that big picture, market? Home health services across the world would be one example for Illume. What is that big picture market? Women's health for Maven Clinic across the world. What is your total addressable market? So describe your industry or market, like I just said, in those very simple terms. And then how big is it? And you can probably find that by doing a little Googling. And once you have that, you can put that on your 4-page growth plan, and we'll come back to that. But now you have your first piece, this TAM, and you could be doing this while, again, we're sitting here on the masterclass together. You can be doing some Google searches and some chat searches and come up with a first go at your TAM. All right. So now we're going to segment your TAM. So part 3 is to segment your TAM. And then after we segment it, we're going to select your TAM. So you're going to start naming here all the segments that could be part of your TAM. And you really could ask chat to help you segment your TAM. Like ask chat, GPT or Perplexity, I'm in the home health market. Please tell me all the different potential market segments. And they could list probably 30 different segments for you if you asked it. And then you could start to get your brain wheels turning and see where you might want to focus. So how would you segment the market of your TAM? That's the next question you want to answer and write down. Segment your market based on demographic factors such as age, gender, income, education level, occupation, marital status, family size, or if it's a company that you're a B2B business, describe that type of company. Is it a mid-sized company? Is it an enterprise-sized company? Is it in a particular industry? Is it focused on a particular function within that business? Help yourself figure out the specific demographics of your TAM. And then how would you segment your geography? Is there a segment of your geography? Most of the time there is. So even if, for example, with a Force for Good, I certainly have customers and community members who are from all over the world. But when I think about what I am focused on in the products and services, I am speaking English, so I am serving an English-speaking part of the world. Most of my events, et cetera, are held during Eastern Daylight Time or Eastern Standard Time, which means it's probably appropriate for North America or South America, but it's more for, so I focus on North America, US and Canada. That's my target area that I focus on. And I really focus heavily, even more heavily on the New York City market because that's where I happen to be, but it doesn't exclude, I have a technology platform that's ed tech that could go anywhere. So this is intended, my ramblings here about this is intended to help you figure out your TAM and help you make some big decisions. You want to keep a big market, but not so big that it doesn't give you any definition. Right. For me to say my market is US and Canada, right? And it's founders with teams of 5 or more, that helps me, 5 to 100 employees. And so that's helping me define my market. All right. So now we keep going and ask, how would you segment the psychographics of your TAM? And so this is pointing to things like lifestyle, personality, values, attitudes, interests, hobbies. So think about your market and the people who would buy from your company. And even if you're B2B, right? You're still going to attract a particular type of person. So maybe the person has a particular job role, or um, they come from a particular background. Maybe they're more urban than they are rural living, or what have you. So identify those variables: lifestyle, personality, values. Person that's part of Force for Good, probably a woman, although it could be an ally, is probably a person who has values are important to them, driven. They equate things like purpose with profit. So these are things that would matter. So they're probably interested in women founders. They're interested in women's growth, women's equity. Those are things that they might be interested in. They might also be interested in self-care, right? I could identify different things that they might be interested. Maybe they are also interested in doing various things for their family, right? So identify what that would be for your company. And if you did the authentic customer avatar, then you're also that's a different masterclass that you can acquire if you like, and it guides you to sort of think of your market as one person. So this is sort of the opposite. You're thinking of big picture, but you could start to use some of that information that you gathered from your authentic customer avatar to see what those attitudes, interests, and hobbies might be. And how would you segment the behaviors of your TAM? So this is where you're looking at consumer behavior, the purchasing habits. When do they buy what you have to sell? What are the things that cause them to need it? What is that? What creates brand loyalty? What will make a person that buys from you always buy from you? What's the product usage like? Is it a one-time thing? Is it a repeat thing? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly usage? Annual usage, right? Accounting services, a lot of that's annual. Stock, your advisor might be a little less frequent, could be quarterly. And what are those benefits and readiness sought? What are they looking for in terms of benefits? And what indicates their readiness to buy? What creates that urge, that urgency, that need? And then how would you segment the specific needs of your TAM? So when I used to think about the market, we used to market to nurses. And when we used to think about nurses who would want to come and work with our company, Illume, we used to think about the different types of needs they had in leaving their other job and coming to us. And so one would be that they wanted to deliver high quality care, and they could do that by delivering one-on-one care with a patient. Maybe it was because they wanted more flexibility, and we had all kinds of around the clock shifts and in all different kinds of locations. Maybe it was because they wanted to increase their technical awareness, and we work with patients who were very technically challenging with vents and trachs and so forth. So we would focus on, or we had a market of people who worked in skilled nursing facilities where they were exhausted, and they often came to work and they had 50 patients they were required to take care of, and they didn't feel like they were giving quality care, and they were exhausted, and they weren't doing interesting things but just doing med pours. And so those were different markets we were serving and different needs. So think about what your needs are, the people, your customers, who are coming to you, and what would be the specific needs and problems or motivations that drive those purchasing decisions. Okay, next we are going to look at how would you segment your TAM by occasion? So segment the total market based on specific occasions, events, or circumstance that influence purchasing behavior. Think about that, right? So like I would look in my healthcare market, for example, whenever someone had a baby that was born early and was medically fragile and would then need to come home from a hospital, that was a big moment, right? Or whenever families would want to change agencies at times when they weren't getting a full schedule. So maybe they weren't getting a full schedule of nurses at another agency. So when they had an absence of scheduling, right? Maybe it would be when their child had an episode that increased their complexity. So right after they went in for a surgery and needed to come home and have higher level of care. So these were specific moments or occasions or triggers, right? Think about my husband, right? And his market and the specific moments that he could trigger on and find them. So there's one big conference every year that everybody goes to. In my healthcare market, there's a similar healthcare conference, the JP Morgan conference that happens in January every year. And then there's one in July. And so these are also the kinds of moments you want to think about where people in your market show up, hang out, and can be found. The next question you're going to want to ask yourself is, how would you segment your TAM by usage? So segment your market based on patterns or frequency of product or usage, service usage. So, how often people are going to use your services. So in the home health market, we have people that only use the services for a short period of time, where they have an episode that's going to resolve and they're going to feel better and they don't need us anymore. Whereas we have others that are going to need our services every day for 10 years. So which are those different types? We had particular services as well, where we had therapy services, for example, OT and PT. And those therapy services would be maybe once or twice a week for 6 weeks. And whereas our nursing services for them might be 23 hours a day for 10 years, right? So get a sense of your different products and services or different markets and patterns of how often they're going to need your services. All right, you've got a lot, right? Isn't it amazing when you start to think about this, just how strategic you can be and how specific your market is. So now it's time to go ahead and identify your SAM and just be brave and do it. So you've already addressed your total available market, the big global picture. You've divided into a bunch of segments, and now it's time for you to declare, this is my market segment that we're going to play in with our company. And for us in the state of Connecticut, for our SAM, we worked on a very specific market. We were in the private duty nurses, complex care nursing, and we looked at it as a U.S. market for our SAM. And so your TAM is very likely very, very, very big, billions or trillions, and your SAM is still pretty big, pretty darn big, probably in the billions, maybe in the hundreds of millions. And so you're going to go ahead and figure out what your focus is. Review part 3 that we just went through, all the different questions we asked, and focus on the segments you found earlier in our conversation. And which parts of does your company want to focus on? So again, we thought about the usage types, the frequency types. We talked about demographics, psychographics, specific behaviors, specific needs that they have, specific geographies and demographics. So go ahead and start to shape for yourself what that serviceable, addressable market is, and go ahead and write it down and congratulate yourself. Really, now you have a TAM and a SAM. Write it down on your 4-page growth plan. And then we're going to go straight into the SOM. So this is your serviceable, obtainable market. And let's think about it today in a 3 to 5 year time frame. How big can you grow? What percentage of that market, the total market that you just mentioned in your SAM, can you grow? So you're going to simply say your TAM is the total available market. You know what that is. Your SAM is the specific segment of the TAM that your company is built to serve over the long term, at like over 50 years even, right? And your SOM is the market share percentage of the SAM your company can own. And we're going to say on this exercise 3 to 5 years. So our SAM is and write down your SAM that you already articulated, and the market size of that. So you already defined it before. So maybe it's, uh, a $200 million market size for strategic consulting services in the United States. And it's more than that, by the way, but that's the total market size. And now you're going to say, over the next 10 years, we plan to acquire what percentage of that? Maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 0.05%, 0.005%, whatever that percentage is. What is that percent that you plan to capture of your SOM? And that is your answer. So identify your SAM. So you're going to say the market size times the market penetration rate, and that equals your serviceable addressable market, and that's how much it is, how much your revenue would be. And that's another way to think about it. What's the total revenue you want to capture in 3 to 5 years, or in 10 years? Do both, and get a sense then, what percentage is that of the total serviceable addressable market that you aim to serve. So now you have all three. Congratulations. And you're going to put it all together, right? So here's the image. If you're watching on YouTube or live streaming, you can see that this is here's this picture that shows you the TAM, the total available market. You can write that down. In the serviceable addressable market, the SAM, and then the serviceable obtainable market, the SOM. And this is the SOM that you want to address, I would say, in 3 to 5 years. And then I would have another one for 10 years. What percentage of that market do you want to own in 10 years? And then go ahead and write on your 4-page growth plan the TAM, SAM, and SOM you just wrote down. And really congratulate yourself. You just stepped into market intelligence. You just expanded your strategic vision. You clarified your next growth stage. You empowered your team with focus. You're going to be able to take this and help them. You're going to have conversations with them about it. I would take this entire tool that we just used, the Size Your Market Maker, and sit down with them and do some more work on this. This can be a great way to continue to foster and go deeper on your market. You've positioned yourself to fundraise if that's something you need to do, and you've positioned yourself to scale. So really congratulate yourself for allowing all of this to percolate. Be sure to update your 4-page growth plan. And as you do, think about the implications of everything else on your plan, right? And is now that you know your total available market, now that you know your serviceable addressable market, now you know your serviceable obtainable market, is there anything else that needs to shift? Anything else that you could be inspired by? Anything that doesn't jive even with your core purpose or your vision or your inception story? And how can you tweak it so that it does? You can get at all of this at aforceforgood.biz/weekly tool. You'll get this week's free tool, which of course is the Size Your Market Maker, and it will also include the 4-page growth plan along with a video to help you quickly draft the whole plan if you so choose. Next, we want to put what you just learned with the TAM, SAM, and SOM into action. First, you want to pick a new repeatable ritual, a high leverage habit, a repeated ritual that when practiced almost guarantees new results. So you are asking yourself, what's one new repeatable weekly habit that you could or your company could do weekly to stay connected to the size and shape of your market? So one example could be simply to review your 4-page growth plan every Monday. Another example could be to read out loud the TAM, SAM, and SOM with your leadership team every week. You could track the growth of your SOM in a live dashboard. That's kind of cool, right? What percentage are you last month versus this month? Add a market watch block to weekly team meetings. That's another thing you could do. And this is monthly, but I highly recommend to host monthly customer interviews to stay in tune with your segments. Really good stuff. You can also pick a high potency action. All right. So pick one specific bold move that you could take to really help ignite momentum from the wisdom you just gained in identifying your TAM, SAM, and SOM. So recalculate your SOM perhaps this week. Take some more time to really get in there with your team. You might add your TAM, SAM, and SOM to a pitch deck if you're raising funds right now or you're getting a loan. Use this clarity to say no to a distracting opportunity. Perhaps you see that now. Start a segment-specific campaign, right? So maybe you're going to see your market and you're going to start to see how your market needs to shift this week. And you can also do an update of your website messaging to reflect your SOM. So these are all specific actions you can take this week to move your TAM, SAM, and SOM forward. So cool, right? All right. And today we learned about how to size your market. And we did this using the Size Your Market Maker that you can get at a forceforgood.biz/weekly-tool through May 11th. It's there for you for free. We also today defined 3 of the core growth elements of the Force for Good system: the TAM, the SAM, and the SOM. You integrated everything into the 4-page growth plan. You identified a high leverage, repeatable weekly habit, and you committed to a high potency action to move things forward this week. So now I encourage you to pick up the Force for Good book if you haven't already. And the book shows the full Force for Good system. It includes with it a downloadable PDF that has the full Force for Good toolkit, which includes all the tools, including the Size Your Market Maker. You can read more about the TAM and SAM and SOM and the Size Your Market Maker in chapter 6 of the book. So in chapter 6 is where we talk about that. And you can get access to that at a forceforgood.biz/book. You can also sign up for the Force for Good tool of the week. Every week, I provide a new tool that you can use and implement one tool at a time. And every growth tool is inspiring you to grow your company in new and exciting ways, helping you unlock your wisdom. Each one is considered a wisdom tool, a growth wisdom tool, so that you apply the wisdom and brilliance of you and your team one little step at a time. And every week we include a masterclass that helps you get off the ground with it. Get the recording and the links by signing up at a forceforgood.biz/weekly-tool. And I encourage you, the best way to implement the Force for Good system is through our Growth Accelerator. It is an online system, online platform where you can install the Force for Good system over 12 weeks, 12 modules. Has videos, it has tools, it has self-assessments. You can do it alone or you can do it with your team. And the tiered pricing starts at just $599. And there is options to pay over time. You can get that at a forceforgood.biz/accelerator. So thank you for being here. It's my pleasure to serve you and to support you. The world is made better by women-led business. Let's all go make the world a better place.